Okay, what do you want to do? Why are you here? Like at university, I mean, like what are your career plans?
I was thinking of taking up journalism, same thing as
Okay, next.
My name is Kristen Degerlake, and I'm from Fishing Lake First Nation. I'm in my second year of university. I'm in the INCA program, and with that, I'd like to get my the certificate of that and enter into pre-journalism at the U of R.
Okay, next.
My name is Paige Duranchuk. I was born and raised in Mervin, and the goal is to get my INCA certificate and then go into school journalism.
Okay.
My name is Raven Brass. I want to be a journalist.
Okay. So Shannon asked me to come in to talk about business. I guess this is a business class, right? And you're learning about business, not so much business plans, but about business in general, the concepts of business and different things like that. Okay, we'll start with just a little bit about myself, just to let you know how I got to where I am today, and that's publishing a newspaper called Treaty 4 News. I grew up on the Key First Nation, and that's north of Regina, about 2.5 hours. Growing up, it was a small reserve. The population was quite small, a couple hundred people. My dad was the chief of the reserve. My mother was an education counselor. Right from a very early age, I always found myself quite interested in the news. I'd listen to the radio all the time. I'd watch TV news. I'd watch the news programs. Quite active watching sports on television. I read the newspaper a lot. I read magazines. In school, whenever we discussed current events, what's going on here, what's going on there, I knew what they were talking about. I knew the answers to the questions. Finally, the teacher just would surrender and say, "Merv, we know you know. Let somebody else." Okay, let somebody else. But usually, he'd come back to me and say, "Okay, everybody else doesn't know. Explain it, Mervin." So I would, like that's the kind of person I was. So when I got to university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought at first I was going to get into music. I liked music. I played guitar. I went to a music school for a couple of years. So I thought maybe I'd get a degree in music so I could become a music teacher. Eventually I realized I didn't really want to do that. So I started looking at social work. I thought maybe being a social worker would be nice. And then I realized, no, that's not for me either. My personality doesn't quite fit that. Then one day I was going through the education building at the U of R, and I came across this wall of pictures of prominent Canadian journalists. These were the journalists that came to the J School in Regina and took part in a Menifee lecture or sat in as a sessional instructor for a semester or two. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, that'd be interesting to go to this school. So I went into the school and I asked, what does it cost or what do I got to do to get in here? And they told me, and they gave me a list of classes, and they told me about the Indian Communication Arts program at, it used to be called SIFC, now it's FNUC, but SIFC, and that's where I met Shannon. And this was, almost 20 years ago, over 20 years ago already now. And I met Shannon. We looked at my classes that I had so far and the classes I need, and we started working on a plan of how I was going to get those classes. And I also found out that at journalism school I needed to get 70% and up in order to even get an interview with the school. So I set some goals. After I got accepted to journalism school, I was happy, and I thought, okay, great, now what do I do? So here's where we begin here with today's lecture. We need to set a personal goal and a personal plan when we come to university. It's going to tie into business. Just we'll walk through this here. I met a fellow by the name of Shaf Hussein at Sask Energy during one of my summer institute, or not summer institute, one of my summer internships. Shannon had set that up. So I got a job with Sask Energy, and I went down there, and my supervisor, he was a graduate from the U of R journalism program. And we started talking, and he found out that I wanted to go to journalism school too, so he started asking me some questions, and he started telling me some things that I need to do to prepare for the interview, for the challenge of trying to get enrolled in there. And he says, Mervin, you always got to have a plan. He says, you got to develop a plan early in your career. And you need this plan in order to set yourself some goals. Okay, so okay, that's career plan. How many people here have a career plan right now? Okay. Raven, what's your career plan?
My career plan is to do the 2 years at the U of R for journalism. Get into journalism school, hopefully graduate that with my master's, and then get into maybe broadcasting or hosting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next.
Get my INCA certificate, go to the School of Journalism, from there become a broadcast journalist. I'm narrowed down to 3, well 2 actually, either arts and entertainment or weather, and maybe in a few years go back and get my master's degree.
Okay. Any ideas after hearing what they're saying? Maybe you do have a plan, but you don't realize it?
I was thinking of getting into journalism school and graduate with masters, and I'm not quite sure after that. Probably try to get into like magazine or something.
Okay.
I kind of get overwhelmed when I look at the big picture, so I just try to take step by step by step. So my first and number one goal is just to get my certificate. I'm only doing 4 classes right now, so I know I won't be able to get it done in 2 years. I have 4 kids, so I think 5 classes would be just kind of setting myself up for failure if I was to take it that route. So I'm taking 4 classes. So my first goal is just to get my INCA certificate, and with that, get into journalism, and hopefully my GPA will be good enough to get accepted into that, and take it from there.
Okay, you made a couple good points in what you told me. You get overwhelmed with the big picture.
Yeah.
If I thought, when I was sitting where you guys are sitting, if I thought at the time, okay, I want to first of all get to journalism school, go work for a newspaper, then I'm going to go into television, then I get into radio, I'm going to start a show, I'm going to maybe expand my career and go in a different direction and go into communications for a while, and then build a newspaper from there. I would have been like, well, how do I do that? You know, it's just way too big,
Yeah.
way too big. So what I did at the very first thing in my career plan was no grades lower than 70%. Why 70%?
Because that's what's going to get you into pre-journalism, or at the U of R, right?
It's not going to get you into journalism. It's going to give you a chance
A chance.
to get into journalism. Just because you get a 70 plus, an 80, 90, it's not going to get you in. There's still a couple of stages that you got to do. Okay, one is the grades. 2 is the written. 3 is the interview. Okay, so I had to be prepared for all those 3, and as I was going to school, I started getting prepared for that, preparing myself. First of all, with the grades, my GPA at the time I realized this was about 67.6, somewhere in there. And I had like 3 semesters, maybe 4 semesters to try to improve that to over 70. You know how hard that is? That's really, really hard to do. So I made a commitment to myself that I wasn't going to accept any grade that was lower than 70. I got one grade one time that was at like 68 or 69, I forget what it was. And I just looked at it and I'm like, okay, it's not acceptable. So I went to that prof, and after the class, and I sat down and I talked to this prof about it. And there was a couple questions on there that I wanted to argue with, and then he said, that's an all right grade for this class. Why are you arguing with me about it? Why do you want to increase? And I just told him, look, I need to, because I'm getting into journalism school, I need a 70 or better in order to raise my GPA. So that's why I'm fighting for these 2 marks. So I went in there and I argued, and he, I don't think he gave me those 2 marks on that paper, but he said, we'll figure out some way where I'll help you make sure that your grade point average is not lower than this if you do, you know, an extra amount of work or something. So I had to do that. So that was one of the first part of my career plan, was to get in there. Okay, now for the written exam, I had to find out what was on the written exam. So I asked some former students, what do you guys usually get in the written exam? So they told me some of the questions: current affairs, who's the Prime Minister of England right now? Anybody know? Does anybody know what type of virus